And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, now on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Flora Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I would like to remind you that if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at the Barry Foster Show at gmail.com, or go ahead and put it in the comments right below, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Remember, we'd like to know guests you'd like to hear us talk to, topics you'd like to hear us broach. We're glad to take care of that for you. You can check out our YouTube page at the Barry Foster Show Daily. We'll be putting up new programming on a regular basis. And please subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. That would be very helpful. And back from his world tour of the Great Industrialized North, John Larsen back in the studios. Good morning, my friend. How you doing?
Good morning. Yes.
It's good to have you back. I noticed you drove your rental car here. That's a cute little Malibu. You must have zipped around there.
Well, I'll tell you what, that when I went to pick up the car that was supposed to be there, it wasn't there.
Oh, no.
And so they said, well, we'll give you a van. I'm not a van person.
No.
I'm not a van, especially driving that far. I'm not a van person. Mm-hmm. All right. I don't like the visibility out of it. But anyhow, so they called around and they finally got this car, which was a 25 model. Not bad, only 16,000 miles on it.
Chevy Malibu?
Yeah.
That's a cool car.
And I'll tell you something, I've driven right about 4,700 miles on it. And I always keep track of my gas, just to see where I'm at. That thing averaged 37 miles to the gallon.
Wow.
Over 4,700 miles. One of the things it has, which I'm not necessarily enamored with it, but when you stop the car, the engine shuts down or it goes to idle. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's one of the gas-saving features of that. And I guess other cars have that too.
You mean like at a stoplight or something?
Right,
like that?
stoplight, stop sign. Any place you stop with the engine running, the engine will idle down to very few RPMs. So consequently, using very little gas. And of course, I was mostly on cruise control for a big part of that 4,700 miles. So cruise control certainly gives you better gas mileage. But yeah, 37 miles to the gallon for over 4,700 miles. Pretty good.
Well, Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, all right, yeah, all of that and whatnot. But, the other thing is that I always, like everybody else, you look for, where's the cheapest gas? Where's the cheapest gas? The cheapest gas I found was 2 and 41, all right,
wow.
in southern Ohio. Of all places,
really?
Southern Ohio. But every place I traveled through, every state I went through, except Pennsylvania, was cheaper gas. Much cheaper gas.
State taxes.
Well, a large part of it, maybe other circumstances involved, but mostly I assume it's state sales tax. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania state sales tax, I think, is like 65 or 67 cents a gallon. That's off the chart crazy and whatnot. But, it was good travels. One thing when you travel that far, some of the drivers in this country are absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. I mean, insane people with what they do. I can't tell you how many people cross 3 lanes because they, oh my God, my exit's coming up and I'm only 100 feet away, so I better pass over 2 more lanes to get over.
That happened to me the other day. We were going to the grill on Lake Jackson. In fact, Monday morning, the review of that went up with Sandra and myself. And I was going south, and I found myself in the middle lane. I had to turn, so I slowed way down to let this line of traffic on the right go by. The guy behind me was not pleased and laid on his horn. I had my blinker on. I said, look, I got to get over. I got to get over. And he was really unhappy that I hadn't planned ahead to be in the right place, but I just was in the wrong place. Because sometimes I realize, and I always use my, even when there's nobody else around, I still use my blinker. It's muscle memory now.
Right.
Because I want people to know where I'm going and what I'm going to do and say, look, this guy's going to get over. Let's give him some room. So I try to not to be one of those guys.
Well, the other thing I've noticed over the years, and I've driven many, many miles because my wife never drove, so I drove everywhere and whatnot, and that is that you can watch people and you can anticipate and know what they're going to do, just how their driving habits are. You can know whether they're going to go left, whether they're going to go right. You can just get a sense of what they're going to do. And I can see if somebody's swerving in and out like a lot of them do, you can tell those kind of people and whatnot. It's a second sense I think people have of all right, I've seen you before.
Does this harken back to your old dirt track driving days when you kind of knew from the cars, this guy's a maniac, this guy's going to be okay? I mean, can you kind of, when you spend a long time on the road, you get to see some of the same drivers, and you kind of know how they're going to act. Does that kind of harken back to those days?
Well, some of it, yeah, and whatnot. Some of it, because drivers, you always look for an opportunity. Okay, is there a hole there? Can I get through that hole? The hole is 4 foot wide. My car is 5 foot wide. Will I get through there or not? That kind of thing. Will he cut me off, and so on? So it's, it's just a matter of creature of habit. You just see things over many, many years, and you just understand and know kind of what people are going to do in certain circumstances.
Driving on 27 here in Highlands County, you do see people, and I'm driving and I'm talking to Sandra, and I'm always watching my mirrors, and you see someone who's coming up fast behind you. Mm-hmm. I'm doing 60. This guy is 20 miles or more an hour more faster than I am, so he's doing 80 plus. Right. And so I know, I told Sandra, I said, I got a guy going to cut me off here in a minute. And she says, what? And at about that time, he comes by, and there's enough room for his car, truck, whatever it is, to slide in. I don't expect a blinker, because if they're driving that fast, they're just on their way and they don't care. So I kind of back off and kind of let them go. She says, how do you know that? I said, if it looks like somebody's going to do a stupid thing, assume they're going to do it. And generally, You're right, they do.
Yep. The other thing, of course, when you're driving up north in the summertime, you have to understand, and I think most people do, road construction is a way of life, because they only have 4 or 5 months to work on the roads.
Not much in the wintertime.
Not much in the wintertime, not like Florida, where they can work on the roads 12 months out of the year. No, so that's the other thing. You run into all kinds of road construction, which means, but the biggest thing I found, and where was I? It was on I-75, and they had narrowed the road down for construction from 3 lanes to 1.
Oh my!
That was backed up. I can't tell you how many miles.
Well, people can't merge.
No, and they don't want to.
No.
In other words, they want to, keep going forward. And don't worry, they'll let me in when I get up to the very end.
No, they won't.
Well, some will, some won't.
Some will, but
right, and so on. So that's the other thing you have to be prepared for is road construction when you get north of the Mason-Dixon line in the summertime. Mm-hmm. It's just a way of life, and it's the things that. And I understand that. Do I like being in a 10-mile backup? No, but you understand that this is what has to happen. Did you have your car guidance system on? Does it warn you about that kind of thing, or? No, not really. The only thing I use an old GPS.
Yes.
Okay, and I use an old one and whatnot because these cars very seldom have built-in GPSs.
Our dear friend Les Lobb turned me on to this one called Waze, W-A-Z-E, and we use it because, number one, you can set it and change it while you're driving. Now, the one that's in my car, you have to be stopped and recalibrate. This thing you can just recalibrate whenever you want to. And Waze will tell you, says, traffic congestion ahead. Estimated wait time 8 minutes. And so one time it actually took us off the expressway and routed us on surface roads for a while, and then back on the other side of a terrible traffic crash that we would have been tied up in for hours. But up in the satellite atmosphere, it knew that that's what we needed to do. So a lot of times, even when we know where we're going, we leave it on because police reported ahead, object in the road ahead, and then it's your job to say yes, it's still there, or no, it's gone.
Right.
So
yeah, no, I didn't have that function available and whatnot, but it was good. I mean, overall, surprisingly, after all that travel, I didn't see one accident.
I was going to ask you about that.
I didn't see one accident.
That's good.
Not one.
That's good. And
in some sections, there were more police enforcement than others.
Yes.
And and they have some neat ways of kind of hiding behind things. And
in Georgia, Georgia is like the absolute best. They're the Bigfoot stealth of hiding. What they will do is they will sit on a bridge with their radar gun, and then there's 2 pursuit vehicles on the on-ramp.
Right.
And they'll go, a red Ford F-150 or whatever the vehicle is, and off they go to chase you down. And sometimes they just park in the median to have their presence known to slow people down. generally, no matter how fast or how slow it is, I get in the middle lane and tuck myself behind somebody who's going, and we just go along until my wife says it's time to pull over and eat or make a pit stop or whatever we need to do.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's usually the way it works and so on. But overall, I guess if you return in one piece, the way you left, that's a good trip.
I do want to thank you
Trip.
for my Ellis Brothers pecan log roll, 7 ounces of pure bliss. So
Yeah, well-
when you pull into, they go, "Oh, Mr. Larsen, you've been on a trip again."
I think so, yes. Well, I'll tell you what, I stopped there, it was like, and they open at 8 in the morning, but I stopped there at about 9-something, 9:10 or whatever it was, and they have homemade ice cream.
Oh.
And I cannot go away without ice cream. So
Who could, really?
I get a double waffle cone at 9:10 in the morning. Now, that's the earliest I think I've ever eaten ice cream before.
And why not? Well, it's warm outside.
It's very warm outside.
Ice cream sells better in the summer when it's hot than it does in the
Right.
winter when it's cold.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
they grow some cotton there, I guess, just as a function of, whatever and whatnot. But their main business, of course, is pecans, and they have nuts like, I can't tell you how many varieties.
Oh, yeah.
Coatings, I can't tell you how many different coatings they put on pecans and whatnot. Then they also sell my favorite fruitcakes. I know a lot of people don't like those, but they sell them, and I always...
The fresh ones are good.
Yes.
My wife makes fruitcake cookies, and when she first made them, I said, "Really?" And she says, "Just wait and try them."
Mm-hmm.
And she makes 2 batches. One for my sister Gail, or for her sister Gail, who doesn't like raisins.
Okay.
And then the other ones have raisins for the other sisters who don't
Right.
care, and her husband who will eat practically anything. So,
Right.
but they're really good.
Yep.
We'll have to get you some of those. If
And
you're a fruitcake
they have
guy.
also all kind of canned vegetables and canned fruit, that kind of thing. And so it's just...
So did you stock up while you were there?
Yeah, I usually do. Yeah, I pick up items that I like and so on. And it's been there probably many, many years before I found it, but I've been stopping there now for probably the better part of 17, 18 years.
From what we've been talking about, it looks like stocking up is not a bad idea. Number one, hurricane season has started, and Barry, the tropical storm Barry, came and went without much fanfare. There was quite a bit of rain here, but that was about it. But it's time to start getting stocked up for hurricane season, and especially it's getting time to get stocked up because the crops up north don't look like they're doing real well.
No, I spent quite a bit of time, kind of looking at farm fields, because I drove through a lot of farm fields in Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. And I started looking, and having been around and born and raised in that area, you always knew the old saying, corn knee-high by the 4th of July. The corn that I saw, and a large part of it, not everywhere, I think some communities, like in other parts of Ohio that I was at, must have had normal rainfall because their corn was, well above knee-high.
Okay, good.
But the bulk of what I saw was corn that was only a couple inches high. And this is near the end of June.
And this is the
part of
first
July.
planting.
Oh, yeah. Well, second planting for some farmers.
Really?
I talked to Venanco Family Farm in Pennsylvania. I talked to the husband and wife. They had a little gift shop where they sell flowers plus vegetables and that, and so on. So I stopped there and I started talking to the wife, and I introduced myself and told her I was just trying to gather a little information because I had seen all the crops that looked very low and didn't look like they were going to be ready in time. And she started telling me, what had happened with all the rain they had, in just a terrible amount of rain. And then her husband happened to come in, and I started talking with him, and both of them. And he said, yeah, and I asked him, I said, well, what does this year look like? And he said, we're going to be down at least 50% from
Wow.
last year. Because he said, number one, our first crop of corn was washed out. We couldn't even get in the field. The mud was so bad. He said, and we're a month behind planting our second crop, plus planting the regular stuff that we plant. They grow a huge number of pumpkins, which is one of their vegetables, but they also grow things like cauliflower and corn and whatnot. And he said, we're a month behind schedule, at least even on the second crop. So he said, I asked him, I said, well, what do you think that's going to mean for the people at the grocery stores? He said, well, I'll tell you right now. He said, don't expect to see prices come down, because he said, this is going to go to market. And number one, it's going to be late. Number two, it's going to be more expensive because I had to plant a double crop. So I have to sell it for a little bit more than I want to, but it was the fact that, the good Lord, Mother Nature, didn't cooperate on the rainfall this year.
Even though gas prices are down and
Gas prices are down, but when you can't get in the field, and they couldn't. I mean, you would see some ruts in the fields that were like a foot deep. I mean,
Wow.
even for a strong tractor, and you can't even plant when the weather's
No,
when
it's
it's that
tough.
wet.
It's
You
tough.
can't plant. So they really are going to suffer this year because they do a lot of selling right from their farm.
Mm-hmm.
They have that little shop, and they sell right from their farm a lot of their stuff, and so on. So he said, yeah, we're going to be hurting, and he said a lot of the farmers in this part of the country are going to be hurting.
Well, we've talked. I'm an old Boy Scout, and the Boy Scout motto is "Be prepared." And hurricane season gives you a chance to do that. We know a couple who, when they see something on what they call the BOGO, the buy one get one free, they will like, let's say it's corn, for instance. They'll buy a case of canned corn, and they get a case of canned corn for free, and they set it back because it has a pretty long shelf life. And so they live, how do I put this, beyond their means. They live in a much better way because they strategically buy. Another thing that they do, and I would suggest that we do, is take a look at gardening and maybe even container planting some crops that you like, things that you would like to eat, and have those back. And I'm learning to eat in season. When we grow okra, we eat okra, and the small ones are better than the big ones, and so we harvest those, we eat those right away, and you learn to eat in season. But with the crops in the north, and I'm not sure what the Midwest looks like, the Midwest looks like, the wheat belt, and out in California, I'm not sure what those crops look like, but it sounds like the bulk of the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, maybe New York, it looks like they're going to be suffering, and now is the time. And as I've always said, if you stock up and there's no hurricane, you just eat it during the holiday season, and everything's fine. So, but it's good to have it put back and ready just in case something happens.
Well, on top of that, I heard a story yesterday which really kind of surprised me about Del Monte, which makes all kinds of canned vegetables and fruits, filed for bankruptcy.
Yes.
So and they've been around for near 100 years. So that was really a shock. I mean, staples like vegetables and some fruits that they make and so on. It was a shock to hear that they were filing for bankruptcy.
Well, a lot of times, and I've seen this, they blame Donald Trump because he's declared bankruptcy, I think 7 times or 11 times. Anyway, and sometimes, especially Chapter 11 reorganization, is a method to restructure because many of these companies are invested in things that don't have anything to do with their original intent. And they may have invested poorly in some company that didn't do well, and so they have to restructure themselves, and going through bankruptcy will help them do that. Or they made bad financial decisions. They either were hurt bad by weather, as we've seen here, or they planted crops that people ended up not wanting.
Yeah, well, they've been around, but I mean, staples like vegetables and that, which people eat a lot of. Now, not, canned goods is one thing. I mean, my personal issue with canned goods is the amount of sodium that it has in it for preservative, and I understand that. But still, it's not very often that you hear a mega food company, and the other part to it may be a little bit of pressure that some of the food companies are going to feel from RFK Jr. and the things that he's doing.
I wanted to mention that because we've seen more and more companies saying they're going to be getting out of putting these chemical food dyes in. And my question then is, what's next? Is lower sodium in the cans and other. I know they put it in there to preserve it. I get it, but they may be looking at new ways of doing things that are going to be ultimately healthier for the consumer.
Well, and you already can see, and they've been on a shelf for many years, but there are already a number of, especially canned vegetables, that already say low sodium. Now, is that 50% lower than the normal? I have no idea, but so that process already exists. Maybe they need to take it to the next step to get it even lower. So you'd have low sodium.
And some of this takes a while. Like they're going to do it in the 26, 27 fiscal year.
Right.
And it gives you the idea that maybe they're trying to outweight RFK and try to outweight President Trump. And that's something that we need to really look at in terms of what's going to happen next. We're winning now. It used to be a joke about winning. It's not a joke now. The next question is, can we keep this going on? Can we keep it going on through the midterms? I think President Trump and the MAGA party, if you will, the America First people, are looking at 26 already, and also are looking ahead to 28, because it's going to be a long-term thing to put this country back the way it was. So it's going to be involved making sure that the people who are making decisions now continue to make them for quite some long time.
Yeah, that's going to be, as we talked before the show started, Elon Musk now has come out and said he's going to start the American Party. And, of course, as I indicated, my one big issue with that is, well, a couple things. Number one, you got two grown men, both of which have a lot of resources. One has a little more power than the other person. But the frustration level I know on Musk's part, he thought that once he unearthed all of the Doge cuts, that they were immediately going to happen. Well, in order to get a budget passed in Congress, it's not cut and dried. It is not. There's a lot of deal making, and a lot of things ends up, I got to give you something, you give me something. Well, that horse trading back and forth is not something that he's used to. He's a CEO. He can come in and say, boys, this is what we're going to do. All right?
And
we're
it
going to
gets
do
done.
it, and we're going to do it tomorrow, okay? Unlike Congress, which is made up of all kinds of
People.
you name it. Okay, yeah.
Let's just use the word people.
That's a kind word. Okay, that's a kind word. But I mean, they get in there and, I want this bridge to nowhere. It's going to cost $20 million. Well, we're not going to give that to you. Wow, you want my vote on this $10 million bill you've got over here? Well, yes, I do. I won't do that unless you do this.
Yes.
And so that horse trading back and forth, and yes, a lot of stuff is in this bill that they just passed that I don't like, and I wouldn't put it in there. And I can understand Musk's frustration, but I don't think he appreciates the horse trading that has to go on in Congress to get something done.
Hey, well, we had, for a time in the early 90s, a guy by the name of Mark Foley, who was a good congressman. He made some very poor decisions in his social life, which actually cost him his seat. But when he ran, at first, his first re-election was, don't expect me to bring home the bacon, because that means I have to vote for somebody else's bacon, and maybe a lot of other people's bacon, and I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to be asking for stuff for our what we're going to try to do. And he was one of the first who worked on the so-called lockbox, that once they saved money, right, that money was going to stay saved. That lasted, and that was under the Clinton administration. Now, under the Democrat Bill Clinton, he had a fiercely conservative House and Senate that he was more or less forced to go along with. So under the Clinton administration, deficits went down. But it was nothing that Clinton did. It was everything that the Congress had done. And that's why we have to look forward to 26 and again 28 to begin. There are organizations, the Republican Party itself, the Americans for Prosperity, Defend Florida. There are people who will get groups together to lobby for certain candidates to help them win elections to keep going what is going now. And I think that's where we're at this point.
Well, the other thing too that I think is not appreciated, and that is that both parties you would think would be working for a common goal. In other words, the betterment of the United States. But you have one party, the Democrats, on this bill that just passed. Not one vote by the Democrats. 200 and some Democrats, not one person had the courage to say, this is for the betterment of the country. No, they all rejected it and so on. So, in other words, there was going to be a huge tax increase on all the American people across the board if that bill didn't pass. And the Democrats obviously were going to be okay with that. They're going to be okay with you increasing your taxes by 20 or 30%. But the other thing we need to take a look at, half of the people in this country pay zero taxes. And I would guarantee you that the bulk of those people are Democrats or vote Democrat. All right, so there you go. A large part of their populace could care less about taxes because they don't pay any. Mm-hmm. Where the other people that are working, that are contributing, all right, pay taxes. And so that's the frustration. You would think that at some point as a human being, not as a Democrat or a Republican, as a human being, you would look at these things and say, what am I going to vote for that will better the country? But they don't look at it that way. They don't. It's strictly down the party lines, that's it. And if you dare step out of line, you're done.
Oh, well, yeah, and we've seen that on both sides of the aisle, where if you don't toe the line, you will be you'll be primaried and they'll get rid of you. And that's one of the things that I think the MAGA party needs to look at and realize and find candidates. We at one time, I was part of a third party organization. Our slogan was "We are what the Republicans used to be," and we were the American Party of Florida. And we went trying to find candidates, and it was very, 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 very difficult. And one of the things that we told them said, "Look, just give us 4 years. We promise. The minute you say I will and get sworn in as a commissioner, we'll begin looking for your replacement and get people who will then begin to do the right thing because they're not worried about re-election. What they're worried about is doing the right thing for the country." And the right thing for the country is a very interesting concept because it may not be the right thing for your district. It may or may not help your district, and you have to kind of look beyond that and look at ways of cutting things. In fact, tonight, Don Elwell will be holding his town hall meeting. It's on Tuesday evening. He'll be holding his town hall meeting to talk about the budget, and we've urged all the Tea Party members that were both members of the Highlands Tea Party to go and be part of this. And I've urged them to look at the budget and ask if there are ways that you can cut this budget to offset some of the big outputs that are going to be like we know they're going to have a huge output for the new landfill. That's coming regardless of anything else. Where can you cut to offset that to keep our taxes down? And I've asked, and we have some pretty deep diving members who can look at things. I've got some questions, and I know that some of the things that I'm going to suggest are they're not significant cuts, but it's a step in the right direction. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So even though they're really not significant cuts, they're big enough to say, hey, look, we're going to cut over here, we're going to cut over here, we're going to try to offset this to some degree, because I'd like to see them have the rollback rate from last year.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how they do that because they've known I assume for a number of years, that this landfill expense was coming. You can tell when the pile gets to be this high, that's the end, and you've got to look to the future. So they knew this was coming, and what did they do, if anything, to prepare financially for this big expense?
And the taxes have been going up,
right?
Regardless of what they, we had Kevin Roberts, who was a Highlands County Commissioner, talking about how they cut the millage rate. Well, they didn't cut the millage rate enough to offset the increase in housing valuation.
Right.
And now we're seeing Ryan Chamberlain, who is a Florida House member, and some other members calling for no more property taxes in Florida, although the governor vetoed a very expensive study into this. And although I'm not happy he vetoed the study, I am happy because it was way overpriced. And now I've seen information that President Donald Trump doesn't want to see no more property taxes in the United States and find other ways. And we'll probably have to talk about this tomorrow. But I think that he wants to go back to the 1913 model, paying everything with tariffs and not assessing the people that live here, but assessing the people who want to do business here.
Well, they've taken in, I guess he even mentioned here, I saw one of his rallies, I think it was this Saturday, and whatnot. And I know he mentioned then that a lot of the things that were happening with the income, with the housing and so on and so forth, that's a problem all across the country. When you look at, there is a horrendous shortage of housing and affordable housing in this country. And I'm not talking low-income housing. I'm talking about affordable housing.
Yes.
Even if you're working, where are you going to get the money to buy a $300,000 house unless you've got some very high position? you talk about having 25% down or something like that, you're talking about $50,000, $60,000, $70,000.
I had to borrow money from my mother to put a down payment on a house when I bought my house, but I paid her back, and at the time, it was $5,000, which is, that's jump change now.
Right, yep.
But I borrowed that, I paid her back every penny, although it was at no interest. Yes, I didn't have to pay interest on that loan.
Right.
So, but we got that paid back, and by the time I got ready to move out of the house, our rent was only our mortgage payment was about $400 a month.
Yeah.
I just talked to a woman here who is paying mortgage payments of like $950 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, because that's her mortgage payment. And I said, do you realize you couldn't probably find an efficiency apartment in Highlands County for that amount of money?
You could not. You could not. Absolutely. I remember back in the day that there was a person that I knew, and they wanted to stay in Highlands County, but they could not find, and they were selling their house because they lost their spouse. Okay, so she was selling the house, but even with that, I mean, she did not have enough money to offset the cost of what it would have been because she was going to downsize to an apartment. The apartment rental, even here in Highlands County back then, was, you're talking well over $1,000 a month.
$1,100-$1,200.
Yeah, easily. And if you want to rent a house, you're probably looking close to $2,000 to $2,500, $3,000 a month.
And interestingly enough, I just saw statistics that Florida no longer is a retirement community destination. That there are so many people moving from blue states who are of working age and want real jobs that Florida is, although there's a huge influx of population, it's not the traditional senior citizens living on a fixed income, or as some would say, a guaranteed income. It's young people with families who are looking for jobs, who are looking to make the state of Florida their home, not their retirement home.
I'll tell you, I drive down, I always take the turnpike down instead of 27 once I get off of I-75, just because of all the traffic lights on 27 and all that 35, 55 stuff. I take the turnpike, 429 and the turnpike. You can't imagine, unless you travel that road, how the construction has been and is still today. There are massive numbers of housing developments. They may be high-rise, they may be duplexes, they may be apartments, they may be individual houses, but the construction in Florida, just in the area that I travel, is unbelievable.
And the people who've grown up here are very, very unhappy that they are losing their pristine lands to development. And we see on a regular basis now in Sebring Avon Park reports of bears going through neighborhoods. Well, see, that used to be the woods, but there's not woods anymore. And in fact, there's a place in Claremont called the Citrus Tower. Do you know how many citrus trees it overlooks now? One. Just one.
Right.
And I have made the rather snarky remark that it should be renamed the Housing Development Tower, because it looks over all of these housing developments. And it's more and more people coming. And I think, and I've been told this, I don't have empiric evidence of it, but some of it's been slowed down because there's not the water in the Florida water table to support this much growth. It's just not.
Always been a concern of mine. Even when I came here, I said, when I saw the construction boom starting, and I kept saying to myself, the thing that I'm concerned about, and I've talked to other folks the same way, where's the water coming from? Where is the water coming from? Because down here, our water cycle is in the winter months, we get no water. We get no rain.
No.
Practically none. I mean, once November is past, the hurricane season is past, your water literally stops. And you're going to have to wait until next June before the water starts coming back again. Now, luckily, we've had some, even since I got back this weekend, we've had some horrendous downpours.
Yeah. The tropical storm Barry.
Oh my gosh! When I came home Saturday at around noon or a little after, driving down it was a little further up 27 where it started. It was pouring so hard you couldn't hardly see, and it was just unbelievable deluge. And I looked at the rain gauge, and it was over 8 inches.
Is that right? Really?
Yeah, it was over 8 inches. I mean, it wouldn't stop.
Well, we're going to see. Excuse me. We're going to see how that plays out, but. We're out of time for today, but don't worry. There's going to be more coming tomorrow. Glad to have you with us. And John, glad to have you back in the Ridge Florist Studios with us. You've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, now on YouTube at the Ridge Florist Studios. You can hear the traffic going by, located here in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. If you have any thoughts, ideas, for suggestions for our program, you can drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com or put them in the comments below. We'll be glad to respond. Guests you'd like to hear us interview, topics you'd like to hear us broach. And remember, every day here on our YouTube page, we'll be putting up new programming. And please subscribe, like and subscribe our page, and join our pages at The Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. This is Barry Foster and John Larsen as we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way. And we'll see you next time.